Fort Stanton and its community illustrates the symbiotic relationship between a frontier fort and the civilian community which developed around it. Beginning in 1855 and continuing until the end of the 19th century, Fort Stanton provided protection to the civilian population of southern New Mexico and played a significant role in controlling the Mescalero Apache. The site, plan, and some of the building foundations and walls date from the beginning of the life of the fort. However, on August 2, 1861, during the Civil War, the order was given to the Union troops to abandon and burn the fort. After the departure of the troops, a sudden and torrential rainstorm put out the flames. The fort was then occupied by Confederate soldiers until September 9th. Reoccupation by the Union occurred October 12, 1862, when Colonel Kit Carson and 5 companies of New Mexico volunteers from Santa Fe arrived and began reconstruction of the partially ruined buildings by constructing temporary roofs of logs with earth piled over them. More permanent reconstruction and expansion followed in 1866. The fort continued its noble service as one of the first national tuberculosis sanatoriums and first World War II internee centers well into the century. Equally, it has served as a military post, marine hospital, training school for the mentally handicapped, and on the fort there were 2 power plants. The first was a direct current type, and the second was an alternating current type. Located amidst scenic mountain splendor, through its gates passed cavalry units pursuing bands of raiding Indians, gunslingers involved in the infamous Lincoln County War, hundreds of sailors suffering from tuberculosis, for whom the post was a resort of last resort, and prisoners of war for whom the fort provided a refuge that could scarce have been farther from the horrors of war. The basic layout of the complex remains basically unaltered from the earliest days.
Building number 5, the power plant. The first power plant was built in the old Armory building in the middle of the east side of the parade ground. In 1935, a new power plant was built.
Infirmary, non-historic, built in the 1950s. Detracts from an historic setting. Could be altered for new use to better fit historic style.
Building number 3, the Eddy, Officers' Quarters, 1883. Radical alterations have been made to this building. However, the basic form is unchanged.
Building number 1, Commanding Officers' Quarters, 1877. Replaced original 1855 structure. Well preserved inside and out.
Chow Hall, Officers' Quarters, replaced in 1904, demolished mid-century. Site of new building hall, 1984.
Building number 13, Officers' Quarters, circa 1855. General John J. Blackjack Pershing was quartered here as a young graduate of West Point. In 1877, 4 wings were added in the rear. In 1890, the wings were added to and around 1907. The second floor was added and the porches above the bay windows were constructed.
Building 2, the Hidalgo Hospital and Classroom, built in 1933.
Guardhouse Prisoners Room in 1877. In 1891, was used as a headquarters and a school. In 1877, there was another building behind this one, which was used as a theater. It was gone in 1933. Then the upstairs became a theater.
Building number 8, the Hub, Guardhouse and Cell, 1879. Modified in 1883 with 4th edition.
7, Old Administration, Company Quarters, circa 1855. Repaired and rebuilt in 1866. In 1891, used as a barracks and canteen. There has been much preserved in this building.
Building number 4, next to the Sierra, Officers' Quarters, built in 1855. Survived fire in 1861. Modified in 1879 with stalls behind. 4 rear wings were added in 1887. End additions and bay windows were added in 1890. In 1893, more sheds added in the rear. A fine old historic building, but it's deteriorating badly.
Building H, Chapel, 1855. built in 1940, moved from Building 12 in 1955.
Massive and jarring in design, this building was constructed in 1938 and used as a hospital. This building occupies the site of the original 1855 commissary and quartermaster's storeroom. That building was torn down in 1933. This building needs style changes to better fit the fort ambience.
Circa 1855, this is the quartermaster's quarters. It was partially burned in 1861 and rebuilt from ruins. In 1873, this became the company quarters. In 1878, an additional room was built on and used as a hospital in 1883. The front was extended and they added a second wing to the hospital. And in 1889, the roof was pitched and changed to a gambrel design, and the front porch was also added. Between 1833 and 1855, the entrance was moved and many windows were added and is used as a dorming hall and a Protestant chapel.
1855, Rio Bonita Valley was being settled by Hispanic farmers who called their settlements La Placita. Apaches were conducting periodic raids against settlements and ranchers. A fort was planned and established May 4, 1855, named after Captain Henry W. Stanton, killed in battle with the Apache. In 1861, the fort was abandoned to Confederate soldiers. Recruiting troops set fire to the fort, but rain extinguished the efforts. Mexican, Indian, and Anglo settlers cannibalized the fort for supplies. In 1862, Kit Carson and Union troops occupied Fort Stanton, or what remained of it, while campaigning against the Mescalero Apaches. Majority of Mescalero surrendered to Carson and spent the next 3 years in captivity at Fort Summer. In 1865, Mescalero Apaches fled back to their homeland in the mountains of Sierra Blanca, and once again, Fort Stanton troops were busy. Fort Stanton was now manned by buffalo soldiers. In 1869, Lincoln County was formed and the town known as La Placita was changed to Lincoln to commemorate our country's late president. In 1878, Lincoln County War climaxed with an intervention by troops from Fort Stanton under Colonel Nathan A. Dudley. In 1880, Billy the Kid was incarcerated at Fort Stanton. Fort Stanton soldiers were instrumental in running to ground Warm Springs and Mescalero Apaches under Victorio and Geronimo. Governor Wallace spends time at Fort Stanton to work on the book Ben-Hur. In 1887, Black Jack Pershing begins first of 2 tours served at Fort Stanton. In 1896, Fort Stanton decommissioned by the Army. In 1899, became Fort Stanton Public Health Office Hospital, the first federal hospital in the country dedicated to the treatment of tuberculosis. To qualify for admittance, one had to serve 3 months on a merchant marine vessel flying the American flag. Consequently, many patients were ex-seamen from foreign countries. In 1939, Fort Stanton became the country's first internment camp before World War II. Captain William Dane and 410 Germans were quartered here until after the war. In 1853, the state of New Mexico took over Fort Stanton and continued to operate as a sanitarium for 14 more years when tuberculosis had all but disappeared in the United States. It was converted to the care for the mentally handicapped and known as the Fort Stanton Hospital and Training Center. In 1966, Las Lunas Branch Hospital for the developmentally disabled. 1996, State Corrections Facility. 1999, State Corrections Facility closed. In 2001, Fort Stanton Rehabilitation Center opened. In 2007, Fort Stanton was declared a state monument. And 2009, Fort Stanton Rehabilitation Center opened.